All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're talking about the cattle. All right, call the meeting to order. Almost. We got a couple of items to talk about first. Yeah, so with that, I guess go to the department, call the meeting to order. Accept the minutes for the March 29th, 2020. A motion second as well. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, department reports. I guess I got probation up first.
Sorry. Like me to stay here?
Oh, you're fine, so go ahead. As long as everybody can hear you.
Not on the screen.
Not on the screen. All right. Don't worry.
YouTube wants to see a beautiful face.
I put deodorant on. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I think during the full virtual meetings over the winter sometime, I discussed fingerprinting. There was an audit done by DCJS that our office had to go through and fingerprint every employee. It's not a monumental task. It's with live scan. It's actually very quick. It's different than the old hard cards we used to have to do and then mail them in. But there's currently not a budget line for that. We never had to pay for that ever. And I think that it's fair to have employees that have worked for our county for several years, some over 25 years, to have our department pick it up, especially because it's something that they didn't think they would ever have to pay for. So discussed it in passing before. Now I'm asking for a budget transfer. The number that came up when I signed myself up online to do the live scan, because we're not doing it in our department, we're doing it, believe it or not, at Staples, it's a location that DCJS uses as a vendor to do live scan fingerprinting. And I talked to the local PDs, a lot of them use that. To go to our sheriff's department and just do it, I would have to cancel the contract agreement that the state has with this company for Washington County. I then have to formally request from the sheriff who is okay with it, but to change it to their agency, then I'd have to have one of their employees help us scan it through under a separate unique identifying number, and I'd have to set up an escrow account that would work with the sheriff's department. So for this, it's much easier to just go through this company. So it's about, I'd say roughly $90, $88 and change per person. So the request is actually slightly over what we need, but it's just to make sure there's no problems with incidental costs. 16 employees will be fingerprinted, 13 sworn officers under one code, and then 3 under a criminal justice employee random code. There's other ones. There's not much to it to be transferred out of the personnel line. We have a position we're hiring for that we haven't backfilled yet, so the money is there well in excess of that amount. In the future, though, there has to be a discussion, I guess, amongst you guys, because I'm indifferent how you want payment to be done for new employees. We have it in the civil service language to have an employee responsible for the fingerprint fee. Put it in there all the time, even though we haven't made anybody pay for it to date. We do have some recruitment issues, so I'm not sure we want to do things to scare people away, even if it's $90. But I think that's probably a conversation that should be had, which direction, if you want us charging people or if you don't at this point. But if we are not going to charge people, we'll probably have to have this budget line that we're transferring into, continuing the budget cycle for next year, probably in the amount of like $200, something pretty low, because we don't have astronomical turnover. So I'd like to anticipate 2 positions a year if we are going to pay.
Is this, I'm sorry, I came in a couple minutes late. Is this a requirement that you must do?
Yeah.
I don't think you should charge the employee. I'll move the budget amendment.
Any further discussion?
Are they going to do all employees at some point?
But that was my, yeah, go ahead.
We, during an audit period, it was found that all of our cards have not been sent to DCJS. And in the past, and this is how it was explained to me, because I said, how is that possible? I thought I remember filling those out myself and being all inked up. They said that some employees of different law enforcement agencies were fingerprinted on FBI cards and DCJS cards. Some were sent into the FBI, some weren't sent into DCJS. However, it happened. There are a lot of local PDs that are going through some similar issues with existing employees, not the newest, because of the live scan era, everything's just done digital. It's very simple. It's going back on some of our older employees. So it's, thank God with live scan, it's very easy. So for us to go do them all, it's a pretty simple process. They already had the contract set up to do it, but that's how it was caught.
Dana, was that like, was your question just for his?
Or like 300 employees.
Yeah, that's what I think the broader requirement, is there a broader requirement for all county employees?
Maybe it's just in law enforcement.
It is, ours is a criminal justice one, but it's specifically our officers by law have to be. So we run rap sheets on everybody anyway, every employee. We do it on every interview actually, as part of our background check. But the probation officers have a specific code you have to put in at the fingerprint. So it's actually says probation officer employment. And you have to do it that way.
You're gonna do the supervisors. Okay, good.
Right now. So it shouldn't be a broad requirement.
Quite a few times.
So
most of your records probably in the Philippines. All over the world.
yeah, Sue, did you ever?
Yeah, going from your department, which you handled this before, to Staples, do they have like a cybersecurity enhancement around
It's
live scan?
it's the same way BOCES or our local police departments would have their live scan machine set up. It's approved by DCJS. They have to run it that way. It has access to the FBI and CIC database. So it's,
I think all school employees are.
yeah, they do it through BOCES.
Is there a requirement for other departments?
The only ones that I'm aware of is law enforcement. I know recreation employees, when we hired this summer, employees for buildings and grounds, like the lifeguards and all that, we do background checks. They don't think we do fingerprinting, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was coming.
I know one,
And the foster care.
Sam appointed me to sit with the OTV board. And I had to get reprinted and they had to do it on cards. You can't, so we had to go to the sheriff's department to find the old, ink pads and shit.
So I think we have, so is, one of the questions in front of us is, should the cost be to the employee? And I don't think there's an appetite for that. Is there?
Well, the motion is the budget amendment. We need to pass that first. And then at budget time, we can add $200 to his line item and that problem solved right there.
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. So then, so on the budget side,
You should ask for $200 more.
And this, we talked about it at the budget time
And,
before, maybe expanding our department's budget lines. We have a lot of zeros and blank lines that we might use every 4 years for different items. So that way, we didn't have this long budget that's a bunch of zeros across. We condensed it, but there were some things under like general supplies that are $20, maybe like a plastic holster for your pepper spray or a leather one, or something really a small amount, but it was in supplies. We had a conversation about why isn't that under like equipment, or but it can't be under equipment based on the dollar amounts from a minimum purchase. So we talked to Al about maybe creating like a uniform /blank/ like line that would be very specific to those type of items that could handle that small purchase. It might be a $20 purchase, so it can't be equipment. So we'll be expanding that in the budget to just show it for transparency reasons. There's going to be zeros though, or there's going to be budget dollar amounts that might not get used for 3 years, and then all of a sudden it's used because somebody's equipment breaks. That's it.
thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Mr. District Attorney.
Good afternoon. It's nice to be back in comfortable quarters. The only thing I had on here, a budget update, and there's a part 2, because I think some of it developed after I submitted my agenda, and it worked out great if I could indulge the committee by having moved it a week later. But I think in terms of the budget, the best description I had at the end of all of it was, I think it's the first time in 3 or 4 years that they haven't made criminal justice worse in New York through the budget. So that was a positive. A lot of talk on bail. I think the biggest thing for us is there was a small change. But for us, domestic violence continues to be a major driver of crimes, and they've now made as a qualifying offense violate or something that judges can consider in setting bail prior violations of orders of protection, which we were seeing increasingly more frequent especially during COVID, but since the first changes. So that's the biggest thing that we saw in that regard. With discovery, there was a small change for raise the age. Actually, as I see Dan sitting here to my left, he does so much in family court. There was a period where if someone's 17 and they commit certain crimes, if they're not caught, or if the case is pending when they turn 18, family court loses jurisdiction. And that was a gap in raise the age. It was also a gap, I think, probably before raise the age, except for at 18, our courts, adult courts could have handled it. So they fixed that gap. So Dan would keep that case until the individual turns 20. So at least really that matters most for victims in terms of restitution. For me, and I think in the county's perspective, the biggest thing that happened is the state has finally created a line item funding for discovery. And that number, it's not insignificant. There was a piece in discovery that dealt with primarily with New York City challenges. And then there was this piece that I think really it helps address the other 57 counties, which is to the tune of $40 million in the budget. Fiscal 22, it will actually be more than that because there was a one shot in the 21 budget, but that was taking money from a segregated fund and was geared toward reimbursing counties for monies that have been spent. So we spoke with DCJS last week. That pot of money is going to be between $8 and $15 million. But that's probably going to be under the same restrictions that existed last year, which Al helped me work through. That's to reimburse if they do it the same way, which is great because we've spent more money than what they reimbursed us last year. The 40 million, importantly, is it was in aid to localities, which really becomes what they put in, they can always take out, but it is an actual line item in the budget that's down there, ought to continue to be there in out years. And that is for staffing, training, and all of those types of needs. So it is a prospective fund. And the 40 million is actually more than what was available for allocation to counties last year out of the designated fund. So last year we got 193 grand. So the expectation from DCJS is there'll be more, certainly than what was last year. So that'll be a significant assist for the county. And what's best is it's not a reimbursement. It will be for ongoing needs to continue to comply and deal with the challenges of discovery. So, which will be new money. Certainly it will be coming into the county this year. DCJS, they have a new commissioner. So Commissioner Rosado's they're still trying to navigate their way through. They're responsible for more money than they had previously. So they're still trying to work out the logistics of timing and the actual final formula. The expectation is the formula will be, they asked us what we thought of the formula used last year, which was using arraignments. So, I think there were some problems with the numbers, but that's probably, if you have the same problem across the state, what does it matter? There's problems with the problems and it comes out. And they said, it'll either be that or population. If we do population, we'll probably get a little bit more because of some of the errors. But so, with that, what I would like to do is revisit the previous request that I came to with no funding. And I understand certainly the position, and it was really intended to be a conversation starter. And I thought it was really good, and a lot of good information came out of that. But I would love to revisit that and maybe see if we can move to personnel, since there will now be a new pot of money coming in for this purpose.
So in summary, state provided the funding. You have one person that is a very strong candidate, and you want to move forward with adding a position to your staff.
Correct. At this point, just the attorney position, correct. And then as we know more, there'll be more than enough to cover that. But as we learn more, I think that's going to be a more complicated conversation with personnel and understanding what parameters will be in existence and how we can use that. But yes.
Certainly, I was one of the ones who was a little opposed to it from a process and procedure standpoint, because we don't want to visit personnel issues in the middle of a budget year, but the point Tony was, we didn't budget for it, we can't afford to do that, so we have to do things. Your point was, the state's gonna fund it until it's passed at the legislature, it doesn't mean anything. It's been passed now.
Yep.
The funds are there available, it's not reimbursable, the money's coming to you, you want to hire this person short term somewhere now, and the money's available to do that, and you'd like to move the personnel to get that process started.
Yes.
So I've lost my objections to the process because we have a way to fund it now with no county dollars, so. And I think, Brian, you're gonna lose on that too, right?
Yeah, my question is, it's probably one-time money. We don't know that this is gonna keep coming every year, so we're still in the same position going
But
forward.
we got $193,000 last year that we didn't know was coming, and we didn't spend it on anything, on this particular.
Yeah, we just don't know if it keeps flowing.
But we anticipated.
Correct. The only positive to that is I understand what budgeting's like, right? But the state doesn't do zero-based or $0 budgeting either. So it's now a line item in the aid to localities as opposed to being a one-shot,
Okay,
which is really what last year's was. But, that's significant, but with a stroke of a pen, supervisor having to say it could be gone.
yeah.
And I don't disagree with that, but I think it's, at least it's in a stronger spot to stay than what we've had historically.
And I know Discovery was on the table when they were discussing the budget. Did they change any of the rules to Discovery to make it better? Because they said they didn't want people let loose just because the Discovery didn't get done. They wanted to still hold them to the fire, so they were gonna somehow make that a little more lenient.
There was a little bit of a modest change that actually has the effect of for upstate, more work, but addresses a major problem in the 5 New York City counties because of the way case law was developing. So for us, the additional work is probably going to not be much because of the way we've set up our system anyways. But we're developing, I guess, protocol to deal with the add-on. It's basically what you have to do when you file discovery, when you serve discovery after the initial wave. Is there certain things we have to do? How it was developing in the city courts was really problematic. So they addressed that problem a little bit to help them. And then the money is for the 57 upstate counties, not the 5 New York City counties.
So the title of the additional position is assistant district attorney.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I remember it as, was an assistant district attorney, and that job description for that person would be reviewing video. And is that what other counties are using in
No.
order to get through this process?
2 different positions. So this would be an attorney who would have all of the responsibilities. It includes that, but they're not a dedicated discovery review person. That if we go that would be an administrative position possibly.
So I will get there.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion?
So when we talked before, you talked to the other position going away. Is that not going away now?
It still is because we didn't include it. So that is something we'll have to revisit. And until we see what, I know we're getting at least enough to cover this. I don't know that actual number will be. And then we have to figure out logistically, space-wise, all of those things that come into play, IT, all of those things that come into play. I'm just not ready to navigate that. And it's a need, but it's not critical without knowing what those funds are actually going to be, how much more than we got last year are we going to actually get.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'll be, we're TikTok, the budget cycle starts again, so the end of that. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thanks. When's personnel?
Next Thursday.
A week from Thursday. Okay, yeah, great. Thank you all. Thank you.
Chugging along.
Thankfully,
You got a few minutes.
thankfully,
Yeah, thanks.
I have to leave early. I just gotta get the agreement
This state's moving faster than we expected. All right, thank you there. I guess is the sheriff here, sheriff department update? Sure. Was on?
Yep, the undersheriff's on in the sheriff's stead. Trying to get my camera working again. There we go.
There you are, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The first was already on the agenda for the explosive detective canine grant that we'd like to apply for.
Is there a motion to the sheriff? Thank you. Second, Dave, Sue. Any other discussion? Sir.
Is that a new dog or are you training an existing dog?
It would be, we actually have a part-time employee, Sandy Blodgett, who we got from Rensselaer County. She already has a canine that we're hoping to then train another canine using her. She's also a master trainer. So it would be possibly another dog down the line, but we just got 2 puppies, one to replace canine Brucia, and that's Deputy Herring is already working with that dog. And then there'll be another dog to replace canine Tusco down the road, and he possibly will be the explosive grant dog.
Will it only be explosives? Is that just one of his talents?
It would be one of his talents. Once they're trained for explosives, really the only other thing they can do would be kind of like a search and rescue. They can't really do narcotics and explosives. So he would be, but they can do tracking in explosives. So he would be more of a he would be more of a public assistance dog than say a criminal justice dog.
One more question.
Yep.
Why do we need an explosives dog?
I hope we never do, but it's one of those things to better have it and not need it. But it's just the way society is going. Unfortunately, we hope we never need it, unfortunately. But we probably will.
One more question.
Gunpowder, firearms, is that something that this dog can smell? That's an explosive?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Should we name K9 and a half?
Yep. Any more
I can smell
discussion?
gunpowder.
All those in favor?
They're okay.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
And the next item was added a little bit late, but it actually concerns both my hats as the Stop DWI coordinator and from the Sheriff's Department. The sheriff has asked that we use some rollover funds out of the Stop DWI funds to assist him in purchasing a patrol vehicle dedicated to Stop DWI enforcement.
Yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Dedicated to stop DWI, so that the only time this vehicle is going to be out was
Well,
before.
it would be used primarily as because the Stop DWI fund has to be dedicated. It would be used primarily by the overtime officers working the DWI car. So yes, but I mean, it would be available for use anytime, but it would be primarily used in an overtime basis to keep those officers out there working.
But will this car end up, we just had this morning, some 2007, 2008 cars that we're going to sell that only have 50,000 miles. If this is only going to be overtime, St. Patrick's Day, weekends, nighttime, is this car going to end up with very low miles?
We're hoping to use it as a more of an incentive because it'll be a different. We're hoping to get a Dodge Charger as opposed to the Explorer or even a Durango, and it'll be more of an incentive vehicle. And yes, it probably will have less mileage than the normal patrol vehicles, but it'll still be used quite a bit. It won't be a 24/7 car, but it will definitely be probably a 16-hour-a-day, 5-day-a-week car.
Al, is there leftover funds?
So, yeah, so for the committee, if you want to approve the purchase, the mechanics of this, since I again won't be here next Thursday. There's a DWI reserve that additional, any surplus money from the DWI program goes up a reserve.
we have a DWI reserve that I believe is like $300,000. Now I'd have to go check it. So they're looking to tap that reserve, and the mechanics, Brian, would be, you would do an interfund transfer from the reserve in general to carpool, because carpool will buy the car. So just the mechanics of it, but yes, there is a reserve money that will pay for this purchase.
And that's where I was gonna go, was the fact that it's a way to buy it without using county tax dollars. It's in the DWI reserve fund.
This is actually fines that have accrued from
Yes.
DWI arrests.
And
Yeah.
so, in getting miles is no problem. They seem to get enough miles on them over there. I just thought maybe they'd want a Mach-E or a Tesla or something, but you know, we'll live with this one.
Schwinn.
Yeah, they were
We're
right.
gonna sneak up on them, that's quiet.
Yeah.
Motion approved, Dave moved it, second. Thank you. Any other discussion?
One question, can all maintenance dollars come out of the reserve fund too? Save the county?
Probably not.
Just for that car.
I wanted to answer before we go.
If you put some electric charging stations down there, we might be able to talk, right?
We do that in reserve fund? Let's buy Tesla for them.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, sir. Any other business for the committee?
The one last thing, I just want to go back to what Mr. Boucher was saying. So we are in talks with IDEMIA, who is taking over as the live scan provider. And actually, one of the things that I brought up to him, we already have the CAPS program that we use for fingerprinting our pistol permit people. I actually asked them when they did the quote to quote us the employment part of it, because I knew this was going to be coming up. And so down the road, that may be something we could actually do for the county, would be that that employment option through our system. Now, I just wanted to add that in there so that when that comes up in front of you, that may be an option.
Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, Dan's still in here, so he's not.
And we're actually looking at, you're probably right, it's probably going to be at some point that they're going to want us to do every county employee. So that may be an additional savings. And then on the other side of that, for the other things that people get fingerprinted for, we could include some revenue on top of the fingerprinting fee. That's all I have. Wanted to leave it on a good note.
Yeah. Code enforcement, sir, floor is yours.
Did everybody get a copy directly from the state of their year-end reports that we filled out? Vice areas that we cover.
Can't remember if I pulled it up online or got a hard copy. I can't remember.
Okay, all right. I got it. I myself, since I've been in this position, haven't asked you guys if you had any questions on what's in those. So I figured I'd ask that today. If you guys have any questions as to what those mean, or how we come up with the numbers, anything along those lines. Then I'm done.
They seem pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions in the code enforcement?
Do you have a hard copy of the year-end report?
I just for you mean? I have a copy that we print off each year.
Oh, that whole thing?
Yeah, this is for each of the towns we cover. I can give you this one and just print another one if you want.
Yeah, because I didn't receive one on the computer. You're gonna build a top and paper.
What's that?
You're gonna build a top and paper in your time?
First one's free.
I usually print one off, and that's why I know I don't have one.
Thank you. All right, well, I just wanted to give you guys a chance if you had any questions.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. Thank you. The building season has begun.
Oh, yeah.
There's still a chance we can keep covering up.
From the Public Defender's Office. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have to report that we have an anticipated attorney vacancy that should be occurring in the next couple of weeks, and I'm requesting permission to backfill.
Who's the personnel?
Second.
All the discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Next item is we have mandatory continuing legal education programs that we are hosting through the Corral Herring settlement money. And this is coordinated with Indigent Legal Services. I am requesting permission to have those meetings here time to time when they're scheduled. And the other request would be permission to supply small refreshments and food, such as soda, coffee, cookies, which is not unusual for these type of training sessions,
For your staff.
for the attendees of these
Attendees, okay.
training sessions.
Thank you. Second,
Is there an up to number or something?
I have less money.
Let's just buy all. So we're done.
I wasn't suggesting a cap, it generally comes in under $100.
Just
Comes
like
in,
Sunday night, yeah.
the last one came in under $50. So it's not generally a huge expense. And it is.
They don't do much over Zoom.
I'll approve it if you love root beer and invite Bruce.
What am I going
All right, we have a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
All right, sir, because you know, dehydrated people, they learn fast. don't they?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You still got a lot of leftovers from Monday.
Oh, okay. Public safety. I'm not sure, is Glenn on, or Glenn, are you gonna kick off, or are you going right to Tim?
I'm right here. Good afternoon, everybody. Got the results of the EMS Sustainability Survey that we just finished completing.
Tim, your audio is bad right now. Real bad. We can see your slides, but sounds like you're very broken and distorted.
Test.
That's better. That's better.
All right, you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Very much. I appreciate the opportunity to do this from my desk. I've got a couple screens down here, so it makes it a little bit easier to present this and go through this with you all. And instead of putting it on Debbie to put the presentation up for me. So I just sent this out just prior. We just finished compiling the statistics from the CAD system and trying to put it in a readable format for all of you. So just to go through the project, back in September of 2021, we were tasked by the Public Safety Committee to form and distribute a survey to the in-county EMS agencies on the sustainability of EMS, gathering some information and data and giving all of you as the town supervisors a baseline to work with moving forward as to what agencies have, what their needs are, as far as what their budgets are and those type of things as well. So the survey was formed and distributed on October 26th of 2021, with all the results being received back from the agencies by April 1st of this year. It is not all inclusive and is being distributed for awareness and informational purposes. I just wanted a couple of notes to be important that the survey information was compiled from our CAD system here at the county, as well as direct information that came back from each of the agencies. Some of the statistics vary. Some agencies participate and do some other activities, home visits, transports, those kind of things that some other agencies don't do. So that may be reflected in their own agency data that is reported in there. So just to make sure. Just for general purposes and an overview of the EMS system here in the county, there are 8 in-county EMS agencies that you can see shown on the map there and listed to the right. Argyle, Cambridge, Fort Anne, Fort Edward, Granville, Easton Greenwich, Salem, and Skeensboro. And then there are 2 out-of-county EMS agencies that provide EMS services within the county. North Queensbury to the Pilot Knob area of the town of Fort Anne, and Ticonderoga to the town of Putnam. Without going through all of these in painful detail, I provided a breakdown that our staff put together of the call statistics, which includes information that came direct from the CAD system. So you'll see total in-district calls. That's any activity that we have that agency listed as the primary agency for, which includes anything in their own territory there, or they would go primarily to as the only agency, i.e. to an out-of-county type thing, where they're the only agency from our county assigned to that and the handling agency. So you'll see the total number of calls that they're listed to, the total number of calls listed as mutual aided in that district. And then it gives you a breakdown, which this is very important to focus on the first call versus second, third, or fourth calls. So when you look at, we'll just use one for example, we'll use the first one on there, Argyle EMS, 905 in-district calls. that could include transports and other things that they've done as well as regular emergency calls that they do. Of the 905, 122 of them were handled by other agencies. As you continue to look at the breakdown of the 122, 87 of them were first calls. So that meant there was no other active call in their district. The 45 were second, third, or fourth calls, which meant they were already out on one call or two calls or three calls or four calls when that call was mutual aided. So that gives you a greater understanding of what the agency was up against at the time that some of those calls may have gone. Over on the right-hand side of that, you can see there are other notes that the agency themselves may have provided to us in the survey, like how many out-of-district mutual aid calls they may have handled. So we'll use Argyle, for example, since they're first there, they handled 16. So they went and assisted other agencies 16 times. And it goes through every single agency that's listed in the county there on the survey, just for reference. And then furthermore, if you go a couple of pages forward to the detail, this information is going to be available on the website. I think Debbie and her team already have it up there. This was sent out to you all and to the agency EMS representatives and captains too. So it provides you with all of the responses they gave us back to the survey, which answers a lot of those questions that some of the supervisors have been asking previously and that we'll need moving forward as a county if we look to do some type of level of support or solution as we look to help sustain the EMS service here in Washington County. So like I said, without going through every single painful detail of each agency's response, I would like permission to kind of go to the end, which I have a couple of recommendations that came out of the survey and to move forward. So I'm just flipping through that. And so really there's only two recommendations at this point. One is I'm looking to have the Public Safety Committee establish an official sustainability of EMS in Washington County work group, which I think is the place where we can get a lot of work done, a lot of questions answered by the board, a lot of discussion that comes from the EMS agencies and what their needs are. Because as you'll see with that survey, their needs are different. Not every agency is the same. Some are looking for funding for staffing, some are looking for training or equipment. Overall, there may be some generic needs that everybody needs, but some are more specific too. And every district is a little bit different as far as what their levels of staffing, volunteerism, and those kind of things too. So we're looking to see if we can get that work group established, which will be appointed by you all, and include one representative from each of the EMS agencies. It's going to be very important that we get them to the table. They know what happens in their district. They know what their needs are and how to best support their communities. 4 members, and this is just a recommendation from the Board of Supervisors. Obviously, it's very important to us all that you all know and understand their challenges, the system in general, what each of your agencies are facing, what they have, what they don't have. Obviously, we're requesting to include ourselves and our EMS coordinators, the county administrator, the county attorney, and county treasurer. And a lot of these people already express interest early on, rather than doing some of those exploratory things we were talking about, like talking to other counties. I would much rather do that with a work group of folks that we can actually have a viable outcome and come back to public safety with some good recommendations and a plan on how to move forward. And my hope is that this work group, we would discuss not only the results of the survey in detail, but identify other needs, possible solutions, including countywide training and education and some other things that we can to support these EMS agencies. I mean, obviously moving forward, yes, there are a great concern. There's a lot of other counties that have experienced closures. Knock on wood, we're not one of them, but certainly we know that we're not, that could happen here tomorrow, next week, next month. And we're just looking to make sure we put plans in place that no town and no community is going to be left with no coverage, and that we're not dumping any one problem on other agencies to try and support that, and then ultimately creating a failure somewhere else in that system. So that's my first recommendation. The second recommendation is requesting permission for us, the Department of Public Safety, on behalf of the county, to explore options on how the county could provide supplemental assistance to the EMS agencies. Should an agency be in urgent need of coverage, a lack of personnel, a lack of ambulances, they have to shut their doors temporarily, and mutual aid agencies may or may not be able to support the needs of that district. I mean, certainly that's a concern moving forward. We have, in black and white, other counties around us, other counties that aren't far from us that have experienced that. And ultimately, the needs just, they've been met, but they've been met at the circumstance of putting the other agencies at risk of not being able to cover their own districts as well. Certainly, we don't have commercial agencies in Washington County that have district or have operating authority here. So it's not like you just pull a commercial agency in right away and have them start and get to work. So those are my two recommendations coming out of the survey, and reviewing this with Bruce and working with him through that. I really do want to say, I appreciate the EMS agencies. This was, I know it's uncomfortable for them. Our goal is to be able to help them and ensure that the EMS agencies and the project and the program in general here in Washington County can be sustainable for the future. You know, obviously we know we're dealing with a lot of volunteers. There are a lot of paid personnel that are out there too, but we're just trying to make sure that if there are needs out there and we can somehow put that together as a project and move forward, that we're able to do that and at least give them a voice at the table and put them at the table with you all.
Thank you, Tim. Excellent report. Any questions for Tim? Do I have a motion to accept the recommendations from the report? Second, thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Dina.
So the recommendations you're talking about is the formation of a new committee, working group.
Yes, sir.
As long as I'm not on it, I'm fine with it.
Well, they actually work together on issues already, but this would formalize the commitment by those organizations to be a part of this.
Well, until now, Bruce was all of this. So, do you want to give up any of your domain to?
I give it all up. I'll say that after 50 years, you know, doing this, I'll give it up in a minute. I think what Tim has done here is an accomplished work of art. I just talked to him and that's where I've been. I mean, EMS agencies, as Dana and I have discussed over many issues, et cetera, and the others, I use Dana as an example. They're very private, okay? I have 8 squads, all right? They're all very private. They don't want you to know their business, only they operate as their own little formal entity unto themselves, and they think that, you know, every day they'll be here. Well, unfortunately, the ranks are dwindling, as I've come to you, and you've heard me speak this forever. But I think this is a start. I don't think it's the thing. I do think that, I'll tell you again, I think you should approach your legislators until this is in black and white. It made emergency services a what we call the essential service. And I mean, maybe it's somewhere hidden in that, but if, you know, if we come below trash, that's a pretty good thing. Okay. So I think until the state realizes what's going on, I don't see a lot of changes, guys, but I do see the ranks thinning. Okay. And most of the agencies are being run by paid people. Okay, there's not a lot of us volunteers, and I admit that I don't do as much as I used to anymore. So, but good or bad, we answer to a higher entity called the REMAC of Mountain Lakes. They set the standards, they set the time limits, they want these ambulances out of the door. So anybody that's watching this thing today that's involved with EMS, and I can probably think of a couple, they know what I'm saying. And they live by this because they want that ambulance out. But then there are other agencies that are struggling to get that ambulance out within, you know, it's going eventually with the help of either another agency or themselves. But years ago, we never had to worry about that. And I'm not going to prolong this all afternoon. But I'm just saying times have changed, okay? And I've seen them change. And is it for the better or worse? I don't know. I can only tell you after doing this so many years, I got most of these patients to the hospital fine. They got in the ER, and most of them walked out of the ER, guys, okay? Maybe you got to admit it, but you still walked out of Glens Falls Hospital or whatever. So I do think sometimes we're being led around by a leash here for some of this stuff. But again, that's my opinion, and I'm sure there's other coordinators that would feel the same way. But until we don't answer to the REMAC, that's Never going to happen. But I will also tell you why I got the floor here for a couple minutes. Mountain Lakes is going to be merging with another council called North Country, I believe. Something to that effect, based out in Watertown, in Fort Drum area, you know, big area. So Mountain Lakes has had all kinds of trouble with the money reimbursement from the state for their program agencies and things. So things are going to change probably in July. And there will probably not be an office any longer in Queensbury. It'll be Watertown probably. So everything's going to be handled a lot differently. And I only see this as the beginning because I think the state of New York will be watching this. And I can see this being added on to it down the road. So, I mean, it's all changing. So what he's brought you this afternoon with this is a good document. My coordinator falls in, did a lot of footwork 5, 6, 7 years ago on other counties. And I think you were told about all that. It's very excessive. The counties put out a lot of money for some of these counties to keep that ambulance going, to keep a paramedic car or 2 paramedic cars, 4 paramedics, depending on the county. So they're growing. They're the first on the scene, but it's all changing. Okay, so this is where I'm leaving you. I don't have any solution to this. I only know that people are always going to need an ambulance. You know, there are not going to be any less things up in Putnam or groundings or accidents or anything else is what I'm saying besides the regular stuff we do. So I don't know. I've taken up your time, Tim. Sorry.
Sorry, we got one more question, sir.
Tim, are you going to be including North Queensbury and Ticonderoga in the work group, or just the Washington County side of the EMS agencies?
Yeah, we certainly can incorporate them in the work group as we move forward.
I just don't know if you anticipated it being simply the Washington County side of agencies or not, because as you said, Ticonderoga is covering Putnam and there's a small portion of Fort Anne being covered by North Queensbury.
Yeah, I don't see any harm in including them. Obviously, if there's anything with the project moving forward that ends up in like contractual things, you know, it may depend on where they reside, but as far as where we sit now, there's no issue in including them if they want to participate.
Dan? Tim, I don't see in this report, maybe, I don't quite have time to read it all in depth, but some volunteer fire companies are also first responders that greatly help EMS with manpower. And some volunteer fire companies are not. I think that would make a big difference to an EMS squad if they have volunteer fire company also arriving with manpower, but I don't see in here anywhere where it kind of notes that. Isn't that a very large assistance to the EMS? And I was surprised, speaking to you earlier when I had an issue about EMS, that I thought every fire company was, but they're not.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head that there's somewhere between 9 and 11 that have first response as a component. It certainly is a help to EMS if there are first responders and they're active from their agency. Obviously, it's an extra set of hands or multiple extra set of hands. And certainly the best part is typically they get there before EMS and they can start providing care, especially in those areas. I mean, you see, we have 26 fire districts or fire departments in the county. We only have 8 in-county EMS agencies. So obviously you can see there's a huge difference there as far as number wise. Hang on one second, I'll silence that. My apologies. So there's a big difference there number wise. So those districts are spread out very wide. So first responders absolutely help. And I can get you an updated list. I can actually send you an updated map afterwards that includes which agencies have active first responders.
Because I would think that if you're an EMS agency in a district where the fire company is not helping you, I think they would have a very big problem.
You've got first responders in Whitehall.
Hartford does too, and I assumed all fire companies were, but they're not.
No, they're not.
And as certainly Bruce can attest, I mean, one of the problems that we're seeing certainly in some of the agencies, and everyone's a little bit different. You can look at those staffing numbers. I mean, there's a couple of those really small agencies that are doing an awful lot with a very few number of people, you know, with just a handful of EMTs or maybe one critical care or one paramedic, and they're handling, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 450 calls, something like that. That's a lot of work on just a few people. So moving forward, it's like, how do we continue to support the agencies that are working and then ensure that we're kind of putting a backup plan together? God forbid something terrible happens. So a town supervisor doesn't make that call to us and say, our ambulance service shut the doors. What do we do now? You know, having only 8 in-county EMS agencies, you can see how big those districts are. So when there's one gap that covers multiple towns with EMS coverage, that's a huge gap that we have to try and fill from agencies that are pretty much already stressed. But yes, first responders are a good component. And a lot of them, you know, will provide a driver to EMS at certain times if they need it. It really just kind of depends on the district, but I'll definitely get an updated map out with that.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Tim, thank you for that report. Again, great work. We look forward to the recommendations from the work group and continue to develop any further things that we need to address before we endanger our constituents with having a gap in coverage. So thank you for that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes,
Carol?
yes, go ahead.
Tim, can you put the screen back up that shows the map? Because mine's in black and white and I can't quite see the shading down south. Who is what? And I can draw lines if you show us the map.
I would love to, Mr. F.
There you go.
Okay, give me a second.
I could provide you with a color copy if you'd like.
Well, I can do it right now, with just my pen, if I can tell like where Cambridge is and Easton is. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Are there any other items before the committee? Yes, ma'am.
Mike asked me to potentially ask for permission to apply for a grant that just came out from DCJS. It's a grant that's due June 15th, and it's entitled Alternatives to Incarceration, Employment-Focused Services, and Jail-Based Cognitive Behavioral Intervention Programs. We would most likely apply under the Alternatives to Incarceration program model, and there's 7.8 million. The competitive grant with, they anticipate 55 to 60 awards.
Move to apply for it.
Second. Thank you. Any other discussion? Dan?
Don't we already have that alternative sentencing? Isn't that the same as alternative
Yeah,
to?
yeah, so
More
we
funding
have,
for them.
yeah, so it'd be funding from the state. Currently, we have a funding stream that is slated to be finished if they don't renew it. Our 5 years is up December 31st. So we're anticipating that this is to replace that funding stream. And so most likely we'll just write the RFP to incorporate the funding.
So we could change it from alternative sentencing to alternative to incarceration.
So it's really, so it's they identify that it's alternatives to incarceration that we can use the money for. But what program we'll probably most likely use it for would be our ATI task program. Although we can be creative and do something else or subsidize some funding in some of our other programs. So that's what our plan is.
With our agreement with Warren County, do we apply for them too, or do they apply on their own and then help to cover the costs of what we do over there? Because I know we're so together right now. There's got to be there's probably 2 or 3 different ways to do it, right? Just want to see what we're agreeing to.
Currently, with the alternative to incarceration, we don't provide, well, ATI ETAS does provide services to both Warren County drug court participants and Washington County. And in this grant, it allows us to work with somebody from another county if it's beneficial to us. So to take referrals from another county, but nothing specific. I don't think Warren County is going to apply.
That's why I
for
wondered if we're
funding.
competing for the same money or if we'll just try to get a bigger pot to cover both counties.
We would probably try to get a nice pot to cover the programs that we currently do. Warren County traditionally does not apply for a lot of AGI grants, nor does Saratoga County.
But to your point, Mike's stretching, reaching out, and being
Yeah.
cooperative, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's
We
it.
did vote on that, didn't we?
No.
I was gonna say, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. I'll get to work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you get all the money.
I do too.
All right. Any other business for the committee? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
We're watching these,
Way to go.